For the past couple of weeks, we have finished the forward cockpit structure with seats, backrests, combing, sole, and a big watertight hatch to the engine room. We've taken up 2 out of 6 portholes in the hull and built custom-made flanges out of carbon fiber. Then we moved into our cabin, where we now have the bed frame in place. We made the preparations for the last tabbing and took up the through hull for the jet thruster. We're soon 3 years into the build of our 52 feet sailboat, and things are moving along nicely. Welcome back to another episode.
Plus 1,2. Sen ska vi lägga en över det.
42,9 meter. We're gonna start preparing now for the tabbing in here. And I'm gonna start cutting the fiberglass strips that we're gonna use. We're gonna have some different widths on them. For these over here, we're gonna have 200 millimeters wide, and then we're gonna have a bit more narrow, a bit less on these ones on the bulkheads, and down on the floor we're gonna have 120 millimeters. But the total length that I'm gonna cut now, because for everything except for the bed frame we will use 2 layers of fiberglass, the 600 gram thickness, and the total length is 42.9 meters.
And then all the vertical is already done. All the bulkheads, everything else is already done. So this is just
this is horizontal tabbing against the hull sides. The one on the bulkhead facing forward, this one facing aft, these angles, and down on the floor here, and bed frame. So while I'm cutting the fiberglass, Johan will start to sand all of this, all of the thickened epoxy to roughen up the surface. So I think we can start doing the tabbing tomorrow. Today will only be preparations. The electric scissors just ran out of the battery, and I have to do this manual. And this cloth is so thick. Det är jobbigt.
Ja, det är jobbigt att slipa i taget.
I'm done with the 200 millimeters width. Moving on to the 150 millimeters width. And of those we're gonna have 17 meters in total. The cloth is 1.27 meters wide. So I'm just taking that measurement, 17,000 millimeters divided by 1,270. So 14 strips, 13.3, but I will make 14. these are the last ones of the glass fiber. Then we have the peel ply. So one layer of peel ply will cover every strip, every fiberglass strip that we laminate. So there are gonna be a bunch of these as well. When the sanding was done, Johan moved on to build a bracket for the jet thruster. He glued the bracket in place with thickened epoxy, and then coated it with epoxy. Do you choose that one? Vera and I decided to carve a pumpkin for Halloween. Halloween is now quite big in Sweden, but it's mostly for the kids. There's trick-or-treating in the neighborhoods, and Vera will go to Halloween disco with her skeleton clothes.
Nu ska vi färga ut den.
What do you think?
Good. Nej, den ler.
Today is the big tabbing day here in the forward cabin. We'll try to do as much as possible of the tabbing in one go. It's pretty cold outside today, so I have the heater running to try to heat up the walls, the surfaces in here before we start tabbing, and we're going to leave that on for the rest of the day to speed up the curing process a bit. Yesterday I also made this bracket for the jet thruster, and that needs to be sanded a bit because I want to tab this in with glass into the hull. The jet thruster motor and pump is quite heavy, it's 60 kilos, and I really don't want that bracket to be able to go anywhere. As I expected this morning, it was quite a lot of work getting this done in one go. But now it's done, but it took me 13 hours with just a short break in the middle.
The next day, it was time to build a bigger bracket for the batteries to the jet thruster.
So both the bracket for the pump and now also for the batteries are finished, more or less. I still need to do some work on this. There's some excess glass that I need to remove. But I think the battery stand or bracket turned out great. It's really sturdy. So I think I will leave it like it is. I don't think I need to laminate this as well. It's coated with epoxy, and I think this is a pretty good example of what happens when you turn off the heat too soon when you're working with epoxy in cold and damp environments. You can see here on the surface that there's like an oily film, and that's amine blush. And that forms from the carbon dioxide in the air when it's moist or when you have high humidity and cold temperatures, so during the curing process. And if I want to paint on this or do any lamination, I need to remove this surface before I do any sanding, because if I just sand on this, I will just push this film into the surface, and there won't be a good bond, a good secondary bond with the next layer. Luckily though, it's quite easy to remove. You just need some hot water or hot water with some soap in, and you clean it off. And after that I will do a light sanding of the whole thing, because I'm going to coat this whole area here in epoxy with barrier coat, like paint, just to protect the bilge, make it easier to clean in here, and yeah, even more waterproof. So I'm just marking up some lines on the hull side here, where we're going to have the cedar strips, and also where the top of this locker is going to be on the side of the mattress. Because we will have insulation inside the locker as well on the hull side here, but we want to tie the locker top directly into the hull. I want to have as much of the interior as possible tied into the hull side, so it becomes like a part of the boat, so that we don't have any squeaks or anything of the interior moving around. Yeah, one of the reasons we want to have the locker here, or this wall that creates, is that when the boat is heeled over and you're trying to sleep here, it's nice to have like a stop that you can lean against or roll up against. Because without this locker, the hull side is not aligned with the mattress. So that's why the locker on the sides will be slightly raised above the mattress. So I'm thinking either we will have the strips discontinued, have a gap, and then continue, or we will just go through with the strips and make gaps in the top of this locker, so we can tie it into the hull. So it turns out that the cedar was a bit stiffer than I first thought, and it was a bit of a problem getting it to conform to the hull sides, the shape. And my initial idea was to just cut them thinner and stack 2 of them on top of each other and glue them in place like that. But I decided to do something easier, and that was just to cut these relief cuts, because that made it possible to bend them. Up here wasn't the problem, it was mostly down here, but yeah, these are not there for strength, just to hold the screws really for the teak slabs or teak strips that we're going to have on top. So all of them are now glued in place and hopefully in the correct position. This line here will be the top of the side lockers that we're going to have here. I have also drawn up the size of the closet in the corner, where that's going to sit, how tall it's going to be. So I have a rough idea of how we're going to build everything in here now. But remember, we don't have drawings for every single part of the interior, so it takes a lot of thinking moving forward now, because everything that we're doing is something that we need to come up with more or less in real time, and you don't want to make any mistakes, so there's lots of hours going into thinking things through now, because remember, on a boat there's many different components that needs to work together. We need to have cables, electricity, also for the windlass, for the jet thruster. We need to have some sort of heating up here. If we are going to have that water-based or just air, and that of course affects the interior. So there's lots of decisions and things to think about right now. Yeah, as always on a boat, space is a premium, so you want to try to utilize the space you have as much as possible. But on the other hand, you want to have stuff that you want to have access to and maybe work on or service easily accessible, because otherwise you won't do that service. And that's also true for the jet thruster that's going to sit down here. Even if there's not a lot of things on this that need service, it's nice to be able to reach it easily. So in this boat design, we have decided to sacrifice a lot of space on the boat for easy access to service points. And that's also true up here. And some of you guys asked why the intake was not on the center line from in last week's episode when I did this hole. And the reason for that is to try to utilize this area a bit better, so that we have some space on this side where we can have storage that goes all the way down to the bottom. And that's the next project now. I'm going to add another wall down here so that we can close this area off. And the thinking I have right now is that we're going to have some drawers that you can access from the foot end of the bed, to make it easier to access the storage that we have in here. And once we have these walls in place, it's time to start working on that blind floor and figure out a way so that we can access the stuff that we have down here without too much hassle. There needs to be some sort of hatch, but I don't want to spend too much money on this. I'm thinking we need to do this hatch ourselves, and being a watertight compartment, that hatch, of course, needs to be watertight, but we shouldn't overdo it. The water line is here, and even if we fill this whole area with water, the boat won't sink much. So the pressure on that hatch from underneath, if there's any water, won't be high.
It's really handy that we have some laminated PET foam pieces left from previous lamination jobs. getting the correct shape of the hull to be able to cut the bulkhead. There will be a smart storage space with some drawers in it. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching and to everyone who supports our production. See you next week and please hit the subscribe button.